So my name is Dr. Tolga Esmer. I'm a professor in the history department. I'm a historian of obviously the late Ottoman Empire, the Balkan world, Mediterranean comparative empire. And this is my youngest daughter, Amber. So she'll be with me all the time. So Amby, don't guard the door. She has to guard. It's her instinct. She's really sweet. Please come on in. But she has to guard the door. She always has to guard the door. Nothing I can do about it. So as we see, I think most of you have seen this. This used to be mostly on the late Ottoman period, the 18th century onwards. But who's an early modernist, right? And so this year I made it. We were starting a little bit early. I don't know. I mean, early modernists, you don't have the volume of publications that the modernists have, right? Because like every year there's like 10 books coming out in Ottoman history or more, tons of articles. And so we designed this class to kind of like keep up with the state of the art, right? With what's going on. What are the major books? What are the major ideas? What are the major trends in the field? And like for instance, like who's publishing the most books? Which press publishes the most books in Ottoman history? It's like Stanford now. It's like almost every single book is coming out in the Stanford series and stuff like that. So a number of books will be Stanford, Stanford University Press. But, the idea is to try to get like the most recent works and what are the most pressing kind of social issues at stake in doing early modern Ottoman history. And I did my PhD at University of Chicago, and most people then were early modernists, right? Doing that. And I always felt like, why do I, as a modernist, and I want to do 20th century, and I thought, well, why do I have to take early modern classes? Why do I have to read Mustafa Ali? Why do I have to read all these early modern texts and everything? And it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because you really have to keep abreast of what the early modernists and the modernists are doing, regardless of what your field is, because it's a field. And a lot of the times, the modernists set the agenda oftentimes, but then sometimes it's the early modernists who have the acumen and the imaginations to hone the methodological concerns, right? The kind of state-of-the-art methodological kind of approaches that we do. So that's the idea of this class. It's to keep informed and really read all the newest stuff, the newest ideas. And so we, but basically in terms of grading, class participation obviously is a big point, is 20%. And everybody's going to be a small class. And so everybody will be leading discussions, for the books that we're reading or the articles that we're reading. Please come on in. Everybody will be reading, everybody will be doing discussion leading. When I say discussion leading, who's here new at CU? Almost all of you are new, right? Yeah, most of you. And so basically when we say discussion leading, it's not like telling us like what are the main, what's the summary of the book, right? Because we all read the book. The point is like you have to really ask questions about like, what's at stake in the book? What are the major methodological breakthroughs? What are the goals of the author? And how do you think this fits in with other scholarship in this field and in other fields, right? Because a lot of the books now are very comparative and oftentimes multilingual, right? Dealing with a lot of different settings in the Ottoman world, right? And so that's, the discussion leading will be, you have to send questions like 24 hours before class, like 5 major questions, about like how you're going to lead the discussion. And they should be I don't know who's American here. So like the big softball questions, right? Like so that everybody can hit. I don't know the baseball metaphor. I know it's tired, but there's little baseballs and there's big baseballs, softballs, and that's what that softball metaphor is. And so there's a response paper that's due, I think, week 6, and basically it's just it's a small 5 to 6 page paper. 1,200 to 1,500 words, basically where you pick 2 or more of the readings and kind of zero in on a common theme between these readings that you think is important, why you think it's important, what are your ideas about that, and I wrote a little bit more in terms of what I expect. And so the response papers, it should be analytical. It shouldn't be a summary of the paper, of the readings you've done. It should be like, you really zero in on an important theme that two or more authors share. It can be from the same week, it can be from different weeks, week 1, week 5, week 4, week 3, whatever. And, you really talk about the main points and what you think is important. What do you think, how do you think the authors dealt with these social issues, and what do you think about the methodological kind of apparatus with which they analyze those themes, right? And again, the idea is like really cutting what's the state of the art right now. What are the methodologies? What are the concerns? Are they interdisciplinary works? Are they successful? Everybody claims they do interdisciplinary work, but are they really good at doing it? Do they show how we really need anthropology to study history? Do they really show how we need sociology or environmental studies? I don't know who's interested in environmental studies. Like, for instance, a lot of the early stuff in early modern history was just like, it was kind of like economic history, and they put in a couple of trees in the desert and stuff like that. So it really wasn't really about man's kind of like, man's as in mankind, man's kind of impact on Anthropocene, or communion with nature, or how nature affects social kind of relationships and stuff like that. But the newer stuff really is doing that, I think, as we've gone a couple of decades into environmental history. And so that those are some of the concerns to think about. And there's basically a research paper that's also due at the end, and this will be basically, it's a topic of your choice, but must use kind of five sources. At least 3 of these should be academic sources, obviously. And you may use course reading as a source. I said one course reading, but you can use more than that. I didn't revise it. You can use more course readings as a source to apply methods that you've learned from the class, kind of to primary sources, to things of your own research interests. Right, so it's a brief paper, and there's a draft of that due, a couple of weeks before the end of the semester, where we can sit down during office hours and talk about it, and talk about your paper, so that you can meet with me during office hours to discuss the paper. And then at the end, last class, we'll do presentations. Like, everybody will do a 10-minute presentation on their paper and their findings of the paper, what's relevant to the paper, how it's relevant to the class. They'll just be, usually there's 8 to 10 people in the class, so we'll be able to finish that in one session. And so for the first week, the 18th, next week, we'll just go over the syllabus. We'll assign readings maybe, so you guys can look ahead of what readings you'd be interested in presenting, ahead of time when we come to class next week. And we'll just read Tulay Artan's article on basically forms and forms of expression, Istanbul beyond 1600 to 1800, and just some of the major concerns. We'll set the agenda of some of the lenses through which we'll look at this period between the 17th and 20th centuries. Week 2, order and disorder of communication. This is Nir Shafir's newest book, again Stanford, on basically. On the order and disorder of communication, pamphlets and polemics in 17th century. Have you read this before? You're smiling.
This is my advisor for my undergraduate.
Oh, well, you've read this book then, yeah? Okay, well, but it's a good book, right?
Yeah, it's great.
He's a smart guy, so we'll read this book. This just came out last year, and then further readings we won't discuss in class, but of course people can look at that, and people can write on that if they want to do that. This is about Ethan Menschinger on basically he wrote a book about one of this imperial chronicler named Ahmed Vasif, who writes the turn of the 19th century. Selim, the Selimian era. I still can't say the Selimian era, right? And he writes about the Selimian era. Which I'm also a historian of that time, of that turn of the 19th century. And then another book we'll be reading is Faisal Hussein, Rivers of the Sultan, the Tigris and Euphrates in the Ottoman Empire. I haven't gone through that book yet. I haven't found a PDF of that yet. I'll have to find it on one of the sites online. But if anybody has a PDF of that book, you can send it to me. He was one of my students actually at Penn State when I taught there a number of years ago. And week 4, Ali Yaycioğlu will be reading his book on basically partners of empire, the crisis of the Ottoman order in the age of revolutions. Has anybody ever read Ali Yaycioğlu's book? Yeah? Okay. So you probably have some critical things to say and maybe some praise as well, but we'll focus on that. Ottoman Uncommon Sense in the Age of Revolution. This will read my book that's coming out with Oxford in December. And it's a past and present book series. It's called Economies of Banditry in the Late Ottoman Empire. And we'll read a couple of chapters from this book as well. And then, my book also deals with non-Muslims in the age of revolutions. One of the things that people can notice with Ali Yaycioğlu's book, there's like zero mention of non-Muslims. And most Ottomanists, it's conventional to talk about Muslim participatory politics, proto-democracy and all these kind of things without mentioning non-Muslim subjects, which is kind of, I don't know, that's hard to do, I think, especially when it gets to the 18th and 19th centuries when the Christians matter the most, during this period. So my book obviously deals with this, and economies of banditry in a very loose sense. It's an anthropological history it's a micro history based on one actor, one bandit, but about people across the empire writing about him. So it's really a history of all the people writing about him and how they explain their collusion with this guy, because inevitably they all colluded with him. He's kind of like the Forrest Gump of the late Ottoman period, because he's single-handedly in the middle of the Serbian Revolution. He's single-handedly in the middle of the Greek Revolution. He's single-handedly in the 1807, 1808 revolution. So he's kind of everywhere during this period. And no one's really written about him except Bulgarians. Bulgarian historians. He's like kind of the boogeyman in Bulgaria, and there's novels written about him. And so week 6, non-Muslims in the age of revolution. This is Christine Fielding's. It's not so new, it's 2010, but still important book, I think, for understanding kind of the Mahmudian period, after from 1808 to 1830, beyond the Mahmudian period, actually, into the Tanzimat, through the lens of basically non-Muslim elites, phanarios, in the Ottoman Empire. And so, again, that's week 6. That's when the first response paper will be due. Week 7 is a reading week. We have that week off. Week 8, responses to reform. And here we'll read a book by Richard Antaramian on basically the brokers of empire, Armenians and the politics of reform in the Ottoman Empire. Again, Stanford University, 2020. I'll erase all these names. We'll put your names on these because we'll read these. And of course, everybody will choose what they want to present on. And then, of course, there's some extra readings. Milan Petrov, Everyday Forms of Compliance. This was a comparative studies in society journal article that he wrote. Haniolu, Brief History of the Late Ottoman Empire. I don't know why that's still in there. I erase that. And so basically, week 9, an island is empire. I don't know, Zekaria Peche. Has anybody ever read Ur's work? So again, Stanford University Press. So last year, this book came out. And so Island Empire, how civil war in Crete mobilized the Ottoman world. As you see, the late Ottoman period, they're really good at getting the non-Muslims into the middle of social practice and political practice in the Ottoman period. But of course, that means you have to read more than just Ottoman Turkish, right? Arabic, Persian, Ottoman, and Turkish. For Ottoman Turkish, you have to read languages like Greek or Serbian or Bulgarian or other readings as well, other languages as well. Week 10, Migration in the Twilight of Empire. And this is Vladimir Hamed Troyansky's book on empire refugees, North Caucasian Muslims in the late Ottoman state. Again, Stanford 2024. It's about the immigration of Cherkess or Chechens into the Ottoman world between the Russian and the Ottoman Empire. And then this Arabs in the Center, this is Mustafa Minawi's book. This came out with Stanford 2022, but I think I might even, I wasn't blown away by the book now when we read it. And I think that we might even put Adam Mestian's book, his more recent book. It just came out with Princeton or Oxford recently on Arabs, and in the Ottoman world between the empire and the nation states that emerge. And Adam Mestian was a graduate from CEU. He got tenure at Princeton, not Princeton, but at Duke, and now he just moved to Harvard, where he's a full professor of Middle Eastern history. So he is a CU graduate. So it just goes to show that we place pretty high. And week 12, New Plains and Horizons in late Ottoman history. This is Chris Gratian's work. Who's read Chris's work? Gratian. It's a really good environmental history, again, Stanford, on the unsettled plain, an environmental history of late Ottoman frontier. And it's basically about Hatay and Adana, and this kind of the convergence of larger capitalistic kind of structures in agriculture, for the world, not like Wallersteinian world economy, but how this new demand in certain kinds of staple foods within Turkey and outside of Turkey change kind of this transhumance and social relations and interconfessional relations in Adana and those areas of southeastern Turkey. Okay, so this is what we have. And of course, we can, when we meet next week, if some of you have ideas about, well, this is a good reading, but I want to do something else on week 3. I want to do something else, or what's missing from the class, and people agree with it, then we can change some of the readings. So the ideas, there are common themes, obviously, among these books, but the idea is like, really, what's this field producing right now? Who are the producers? What are the ideas? What are the trends? What are the social issues at stake? Rather than being just a class on, everyday life history, or a class on, Ottoman economic history or something like that, social discontent and rebellion or whatever, like a specific class. It's broader, but the idea is to really see what's the state of the art in the field at the moment,